Hey everybody, welcome to my video log. What could be better than a day with Chris Russo? Chris, welcome to the video log.
Hello, Peter.
So, so much has happened. You and I got together in Morrill Hall on February 9th, and
Right.
we talked about the glory of God as a human being fully alive and what's the role of sports there. That was before any of us ever heard of COVID-19. It was 14 and a half weeks ago, and it seems like 12 years ago.
Boy, oh boy. Yeah, I've been at home since, I think I've done 40, after this week, Friday, it'll be 51 shows. So roughly about 49, 50 shows so far. I've been home since probably March 15th, somewhere along those lines. I've had a million guests. There's been enough developments here and there where I can figure out a way to do a radio show. I've done some book authors. I had Brady go to Tampa. I had the NFL draft. I had the NFL schedule. There's been enough. I had, some passings, Don Shula. There's been enough going on where I have been able to get through the shows. Some days a little bit more taxing than others. I would say probably 4 shows are awful out of the 50. But for the most part, I think I've counted them. For the most part, it's been okay. We've gotten through it. Finding a spot to start the show is tricky.
Mm.
What do you start on a day like middle of May? What do you start with? You can, scream about plans, NBA and baseball. You can scream about the baseball union and the owners. You can talk about Disney for the NBA. There's things you can do, but as far as every day during this period, you're not going to have a major topic. So you're going to have to be somewhat creative. The Jordan documentary helped too, Peter. I had, that aired 2 hours a day, 2 hours every Sunday for 5 weeks. And, we did at least a show, maybe a show and a half on the previous episode the following week. So that helped us a little bit too. So there's been enough to work with, but, right now, as you head to the early part of the summer, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, that's an understatement here. I say in the New York Times today, the sports section, which is so anemic, it's unbelievable. 2 pages, one about gymnastics and all the trouble they've had. And really, page 2 was all about Jordan. It was about shoes and whether or not that documentary was any good. So
I think it was. Yeah, I saw it. That's where, my calls have been pretty consistent. They've been pretty loyal. A lot of people are cooped up. We wondered if, in fact, when we began this ordeal here, whether calls would be, part of the equation because they're not in cars. So you wondered if they were going to contribute, when they're not on the road. And they have. At least my audience has. So It really hasn't been that many days where I said, geez, there's nobody here. Who am I talking to? That dreaded feeling that you're talking to nobody. Yeah. There haven't been that many days like that. So for the most part, it's been better than I thought, for the most part.
Chris, let's face it, you're a professional talker. You have an encyclopedic memory of things that nobody ever heard of. So you've got stuff going on. You've been able to look in the rearview mirror a little bit and talk about some previous games, talk about Don Shula and the great coach that he was. So let's take a moment here and just have you speculate forward here. So what do you think of summertime? Sports world in summer.
I think there's going to be such a financial hit if these sports don't play that I think they will do their damnedest to get out there. If you notice in the last 3-4 days, there's been a movement here with the colleges. Notre Dame, August 10th, if all goes well, I got a kid, Colin, going to Wisconsin. They're going to open up. Ohio State said the other day that, maybe there's a way we can put 20,000 fans in the stadium. So, the SEC is going to play football. Those states are going to play football, Alabama, LSU, places like that, Georgia. So I think you will see a little bit more of an opening here in the next few weeks. I think the NBA will try to put something together. That's a lot of money at stake. Same thing with the NHL. Baseball right now is bleeding money. So I think they will figure out a way to get some sort of season going sometime in early July. There's going to be a training camp aspect to this because these teams that stopped the NHL and the NBA, they got to go back out there and get themselves organized with sort of they've been out for 10 weeks. You can't get these players hurt. And baseball hasn't had spring training for a long time. So there's going to be a, reintroduction to their sports for these athletes and all 3 of them. But I do think that you'll see something come July. I think it's funny. The one sport that has been unscathed is football. I mean, they ran their draft. All right, they wasn't in Vegas, but they ran it. They had great TV ratings. They released the schedule. They did free agency. And the NFL, which, tramples on everything, I have hard to believe that the NFL will get out of this scot-free. And remember, that is not a social distance sport. So I do think the NFL will have some of these things they will have to deal with. Plus, there might be that resurgence that we've all talked about sometime late in the fall. So the NFL will deal with this in some way. But I do think you will see something with the three sports in July, maybe late June. I think you'll see something. NHL, NBA will resume. Maybe they shorten the regular season because they haven't quite finished their regular seasons. Maybe they don't bring teams back to play meaningless games who are out of it. They might do that. And I think baseball will play an 80-game schedule, and I think they'll try to keep the travel limited, and I think they will try to do it in their home parks without fans.
Yeah. So interesting. There's a whole ecosystem around each one of these teams and around all of these sports, particularly in baseball where there's more people in the seats and more people buying expensive hot dogs and large beers. What do you make of South Korea where they have cardboard people in the stands and they pump in music? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not high on that. We know there's not going to be fans, so let's not pretend. I know the broadcasters. I had Joe Buck on, and he said that he was very concerned about doing baseball games without any soundtrack, any background noise. So, I'll have to wait and see how that approaches. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to fool America. We know nobody's in the stands, so we'll see how that works itself out. I mean, South Korea did a very good job with the testing. South Korea travels by bus, not as many teams, but they have, gotten through their first 3 weeks in pretty good shape. The German Soccer League played that first weekend. Yeah. The golf season is going to begin in, they're going to try to play that Colonial there, the Charles Schwab Classic, in a couple of weeks down in Fort Worth. So you will see things eventually, open up. You had the little Rory McIlroy thing this week down at Seminole in the NASCAR. So you will see some things open up. Again, there's too much money involved. And there's going to come a point where people are going to say, no, there's a chance we're going to have to take. Keep the older folks maybe under wraps. My mother, for instance. Yeah. But let's go out there and, let's remember that we have to figure out a way to keep these sports upright. I mean, baseball is getting murdered. And baseball, each game is about 35% is revenue is, game day revenue, tickets, suites, parking, concessions, all those things. That's a lot of money for these franchises to lose. So I think that you will see baseball do anything they can to play some kind of schedule. And remember, they get a lot of money from television. So if they can get into a postseason, they get $750 million from Fox, ESPN, and TNT. That's a lot of money to throw away, and they're losing, a fortune. So again, money talks, Peter, and I think you will see something with these three sports figure something out. I really do.
Wow, really fascinating. The ecosystems around them, and then also the role of spectators. Do you think these games without spectators will be lesser because there's no native energy in the stadium?
I think it would be very difficult to get used to for you and me watching. I think you will get used to it. I think people will say this is better than nothing. So I do think, we'll get accustomed to it. But how the athletes respond without any energy in the building, and don't forget, it's a big stadium. The baseball's playing in major league ballparks. The NBA is going to be playing in empty arenas, probably in Orlando. I don't know what the NFL is going to do. It's too soon to make a determination on that. But those three sports, that need energy from their buildings, and don't forget the NBA and the NHL are indoors. Yeah. So, it's going to be very quiet, and you're going to hear a lot of, sneakers squeaking on the floor, and it'll be interesting to see how these players handle that. I think they'll get used to it. A game is a game, but I do think it will be a different experience for everybody involved. The players and the viewers. Like everything else, you'll get used to it. But I think the one good thing that might come out of this, it might be a little bit more of an appreciation for fans. I think the athletes will miss not having the fans around. And, the fans sometimes can be a pain in the neck. They boo, they this, they that. They get annoyed. They run these players out of town. I think there'll be a little bit more appreciation. Fans for the athletes and not being able to be there live to see them, and the athletes not having a chance to play in front of anybody. So there might be a little bit more of a tighter bond to your down the road.
Yeah, yeah, really interesting. What about high school sports? What do you think is going to happen here? These football players all going to, up the middle for two and then land in a big pile on top of each other?
High school sports is a little different because it's not a monetary scenario. UCF, we had a guy on the other day, the AD at University of Central Florida. If they don't play football this year, they lose $30 million. Now, if New Canaan doesn't play football this year, they do not lose $30 million. So, I mean, it is a monetary scenario at college and the NFL. It is not a monetary scenario for the high schools. I'm sure there's a little monetary aspect to it. The football program, they get people to go to the games and, there's a school spirit involved and people buy T-shirts and, they join the booster clubs and all that money counts, but it's not $30 million.
Right. $30 million is an incredible amount of money.
Yeah, so I think that you will see the high schools be a little bit more conservative than you will see the colleges be. So I'm not sure how to determine that. I do think some of these high school sports, soccer and football, are in jeopardy here for September. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. I know the Baseball Hall of Fame took a pass on getting together this year and everything. I think this is going to come and there's just going to be.
And the Football Hall of Fame is going to take a pass too. Remember, they're a week after the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's
and
right.
They're not going to have people go to Canton. So you could say, I would think the same thing will happen with the Football Hall of Fame that happened with the Baseball Hall of Fame. I would think.
Yeah. So what's the most radical thing that you think that nobody agrees with? I mean, you have any thoughts about all this stuff that people,
I think the radical thing is right now is how the players get paid. I mean, how do you handle the players getting paid right now in these sports? I mean, they're going to play in empty stadiums, so the revenue is not the same for the owners, so they're going to lose money in some cases by playing games. But by the same token, the players, do they take a pay cut when they're putting their health risk at line? I mean, let's face it. Roger Goodell is not going to be on the field playing. The players are. So shouldn't the players not have any pay cuts based on the fact that they're at risk more than the owners and GMs and front office type? So I think that will have to be debated. I mean, the players aren't going to get paid unless they go out there and perform. But the issue is how much of a deduction you give them when you consider that they are the ones who are at risk more than anybody else. So how do you handle that if you're trying to negotiate what they should be paid? So I think that would be a big debate without the fans in the three other sports. I mean, remember the NBA player, a lot of them have already been paid because they played a large part of their season. The NHL player has been paid. The baseball player has not been paid. So how this translates would be very interesting to keep an eye on. I think that would be debatable of how that works. I think the other thing that will be interesting is if there's some stadiums or counties that don't open up their states to these stadiums. Now, right now, it seems like California, New York are going to open up their arenas and stadiums without fans for the Jets, the Giants, the Raiders, the Rams, and all the. But there might be a state or two down the road that won't do that. And what do those teams that play in that state do? I think that would be interesting as well.
Yeah, really, really interesting. And the way the virus hits, I mean, we don't know a lot about this virus, and it seems to hit certain areas harder than others, and other states seem to get a pass. Who knows how that's all going to come out?
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that you got to be somewhat concerned about is when this returns. That's why you are seeing baseball not playing more than 80 games, because the last thing baseball can do is play a 130-game schedule, go into middle of November, pay all the players the regular season money, and then all of a sudden second pandemic hits and they don't get their postseason money. And that's disaster. So That is why you will see baseball specifically make sure they end by Halloween, play a quick postseason, and get out of there. That's why Notre Dame is going to give you a 2-month break from Thanksgiving through Christmas for their kids because they fear this second wave coming. They don't want anybody on campus. So you will see that schedule condensed to stay away. Now, football can't do this, but the baseball can, the NBA can, the NHL can. You will see a scenario where these leagues will try to schedule it where they're off October, or at least most of November and a little bit of December. You will see that.
Yeah, interesting. So you talk to people all day long. You talk to coaches and players. You have people calling in from around the country, people who are just crazy devoted to sports. Do you have any sense over the past 2 months that what's happening in Psychic America as people call in, the sorts of things they talk about, the role of sports in their mental health, anything in that whole mix?
Well, I think the most important thing is at least in my case, the fans want to hear you every day because it's a sense of normalcy. So, they have me on there. The fans that listen to me, I give them something to think about. Hey, Russo's on, I put him on. So, I mean, there is a sense of decorum in their life. Okay, 3:00, here comes Chris. So that is my role. And I sort of take the place a little bit, not having sports. That's where the Jordan documentary, that's why 6-7 million people watched it. That's why the ratings have been very good for these old time sports that have been put on the air. Sports is a common denominator and people miss it. And that's why Brady got so much attention with going to Tampa. That's why, so many people watch the NFL draft on television. They had 55 million people in a space of 3 days watch that. I mean, a lot of people watch that, and that's nothing to watch, and they still were attached to it. So I think you have seen how important sports is to society, and at least in my case, I'm fulfilling a role for a lot of fans because I'm their thought to sports. So I try to go on there every day and give them sports in some capacity, whether that's old time stuff, something that is relatively current, as you say, with, the NFL schedule, breaking that down. So I try to do something that is sports related on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah. What do you make of Brady and Gronk going to Tampa?
I think it's great for the league. I really do. I think it's terrible for Tampa. They're going to maybe get Brady and Gronkowski and not be able to put fans in the stadium. So I feel bad for them that they might actually have a decent team and they may not even have any fans there for a while. Because who knows if there's going to be fans in NFL stadiums come September 10th. Right now you'd have to say no, but, who knows? So you feel bad for them there. And, no home field in the NFL would be very interesting because home field in the NFL is very important. It's not important in baseball. The best player wins in basketball, so it doesn't really make any difference what the games are. But in football, the home field is important. Going to Green Bay is a big edge for the Packers when they have a team coming to visit them. So that will be a big thing with the schedule. I feel bad for the Tampa fan. But to me, you're only as strong as your weakest link. We all know Tampa's been a horrendous franchise for a long time. So having Gronk and Brady there to me is a positive. So I'm happy for that.
Yeah. Well, in our household, we love to hate the Patriots. So for me, it's very confusing, just really confusing.
I mean, it's a two-pronged attack. You're very curious to see how Belichick handles it without Brady, and you're very interested to see how Brady plays without Belichick. So you're putting interest with two franchises. Tampa's historically bad. Now Brady goes there, and you see if Brady can somehow turn them around, and who would doubt him? And Belichick, the great coach, now he's there, of course, in Tampa, in New England. He doesn't have the great quarterback. Can he be respectable? Can he have a decent club? So those two things will be interesting to keep an eye on with the NFL if, in fact, we get it going in September.
Yeah. Maybe we should put Belichick on the COVID-19 White House committee. He's really good with strategy. Maybe give Belichick another job here if it doesn't.
Yeah, he is. If anybody can fix it, it's him. I think Belichick's looking forward to the challenge, and I think so is Brady. I think in a lot of ways, being apart will motivate the both of them. So I think it'll be fun to watch that.
Well, I'm not, as I said, we're sort of categorically opposed to New England, but I must say I was distressed last year when I saw Tom Brady missing guys, overthrowing players in the middle range that he used to nail perfectly every time. I was like, holy smokes! I don't know if he's lost the magic dust or something like that.
Yeah, he didn't play. He didn't have a lot to work with, but he did look older. But he's going to go to Tampa. He got good weather. He's got good receivers, Gronkowski included. He'd be extra motivated. I would at least for this first year, I'd expect Brady to play well. Now he is 43 years of age. Sooner or later, it's going to be too much. He's going to be too old. Eventually he's not going to be able to play anymore. But I do think at least this first year he'll play well. I really do. Now we'll see about how the sport's going to operate. Because, again, no fans is going to change the whole impact of it. It's going to be weird if, again, going to Lambeau, no fans is going to put everybody in the middle because the no fans hurts the good team because the good team's going to win 4 or 5 road games anyway. But he's not going to have a home field advantage. So he'll lose a couple of extra games at home because there's no big deal playing a home game. So I think you'll see a much more parity if there's no fan base in this sport with the fans.
Oh, yeah. No, really, really interesting. I'm a football fan, and I sort of can't wait to see it too. But I think we're going to see something that's different. Okay, just a gear switch here because I know you got to go back in your own radio show a little bit. Okay, so you've been home. You got your mom living away nearby. What about going to church on TV? What's that been like for you?
I have done it. I did it for Easter. I saw you another time. I don't go as much, and it's my era when the weather gets nice in the summer, because that's in the Sunday mornings. There's a chance to go out there and play sports. So so my attendance is not great. Forgive me, Father, the whole bit. It's not great there from Memorial Day on. And I also pay attention to the Catholic stuff too. Right. And I did watch I watched an Easter service from South Bend, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So I watched that. Yep. Because they had one. But you have done a superb job with the streaming. It is weird not being able to take communion. But I have watched, my mom has watched. She loves the Thursday choir thing because they do a Zoom thing on Thursdays with the choir. It'd be interesting to see how many people will zip back to church when this is over eventually. And when church opens, they've gotten used to watching it on the stream. They may not feel they have to go so much. That would be interesting to see if you can bring your flock back to St. Mark's. But it is, listen, it's not exactly the same, but it's needed. The streaming stuff, it's needed on Sundays.
Yeah, just a few things here. One, I got my Book of Common Prayer here. I don't know that there's a place for confession for golfing during the summertime here in here.
What's
that? I think the future of the church is going to be a hybrid future. It's going to be a change future. We have people who are streamed from all over the country and, out of the country. And we have, as I said, we have many, 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 many more people streaming our services than come face to face. So I think in the future, there's going to be a whole portion of people that can't wait to see each other face to face and hug each other and actually see a human being with flesh. And others are going to be like, man, I'm fine in my PJs in Florida.
It's like it. Right. It's like work. A lot of people are going to learn how to work from home.
Yeah.
So they're going to stay working from home. Some miss the environment of the office, and some like it. They don't have to commute. It's the same scenario here for church. Some people say, you know what? I can watch it more casually, but I can still feel the church vibe if I stream it. And then other people say, you know what? Church is not the same unless I'm actually in the building. So, and I can take my communion. So I think you will have a little bit of a hybrid thing. I still think most people, though, will go to church. I miss not being in the station. Although I do commute 3 hours a day, when I do commute in the city, I do miss that. I don't necessarily miss it in the summertime when the weather's nice, but I do miss it in the day-to-day. You don't have that vibe when you're at home. So I will see myself going right back into the New York City area, but I see a lot of people say, you know what, the heck with it, I'll work from home.
Yeah. Media. So this is having a huge effect on churches. It's having a huge effect on sports franchises. Tell me about the sports media business. Is this going to be a shakeout in that, or is everybody more or less holding on and talking about whatever they can talk about?
Well, I think people have taken pay cuts in the media. You've seen ESPN announcers have taken pay cuts. NBC announcers have taken pay cuts. Yeah. There's no games to broadcast, and, you got to almost share the load as far as the losses are concerned. You've seen radio station hosts take pay cuts. I mean, it's hurt the newspapers. I mean, it's definitely hurt the media. I don't forget the newspaper business is not exactly flourishing anyway. So it has hurt the media a lot. No advertising for terrestrial radio stations. Why would you advertise? You can't go to the stores anyway. Subscriptions for Sirius would hurt because less people are buying cars. So, I mean, and advertising. So, you get hurt there. So it's definitely hurt the media business. There's no question. Now, remember, from a television standpoint, they don't have to pay the right fees. So they get a little break there. There wasn't the Masters, so CBS didn't have to pay the Masters billions of dollars. Yeah. You got to keep that in mind. It's funny. Wimbledon was the smart one. They're the only tennis tournament that had pandemic insurance. So Wimbledon canceled early, if you noticed, and they got $141 million because of an insurance. They paid a $2 million premium a year, and then they got a $141 million check by canceling the event from a pandemic. So Wimbledon actually almost would do them good to cancel. They can, from a money perspective, the U.S. Open, the French Open, and places like that didn't buy the insurance for a pandemic. Wimbledon did. So, but the rights fees, there's no rights fees right now. So a lot of media companies have saved money with their rights fees. You know, and remember, these rights fees are very expensive.
Yeah.
You know, overall, you know, I'm sure they're losing a fortune. I think Sirius is hung in there pretty well. But we haven't had really a lot of cutbacks yet at Sirius. But, you know, it's not going to last forever. It's only been 8, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. This lasted 6 months. You're going to see some real big hits.
Yeah.
You're still at the point that it's not been unbelievably damaging. You know, you get to the summer and this goes on in the fall, then it's a major problem.
Yeah. Well, you know, whatever the new normal is going to be until we all have vaccines and all kinds of treatments and testings and this and that, clearly we're in for a different world here for the next year and a half, I think.
You need a vaccine. Need a vaccine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Chris, man, I just love talking to you. And I'm really grateful that you came on to speak with me here today. I really believe that there's a kind of heaviness about things. And
gotta make it light. Gotta make it light.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm serving up you to our people here and the people beyond us so that they can hear the liveliness in your voice and know that it ain't over yet because you're still barking out the
This is not going to last, Peter. This is not going to last forever. Sooner or later, you know, they're going to find something to take care of this, and you're going to be able to control it. You're either going to get vaccines to make sure you don't die, or you're going to get a vaccine to make sure you don't get it. Yeah. Sooner or later, this is going to happen. It might be another 8 months, but this is, you know, I'm sure England in 1940 thought the bombing would never end. It eventually did. And I'm sure, so eventually this will end. When, who knows? You know, hopefully sooner rather than later, but this is not going to go on forever. That's the way I look at it.
It's true. And I love the historical perspective, knowing that you were a history major there at Rollins College. Right. You have vocation to reading those big fat history books that you do and bemoaning the fact that your kids don't know anything about World War II.
Oh, it drives me crazy. I mean, they wouldn't know who Churchill was if they fell on him for crying.
That was every time when we come to June 6th, I always tune into your show because I know you're going to be upset that they don't understand invasion or something like that. I always love that. Hey, I'm also want to say I'm grateful to Tim, whose Zoom account I'm using right now. It's good to have an in-home.
He gets paid, Peter. Don't be too thankful. He's getting paid by the old man. So
I hope he's getting paid because the old man's useless without him.
No, I'm terrible. Without him, I can't. You wouldn't hear me. I mean, he is the guy electronically.
I tell you, once you told me it was going to run through him, I knew everything was going to be fine.
We'd be on.
I thought if I was left to you, I was like, oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. Anyway, hey, we all love you.
Good job, Peter. Keep in touch, pal. Okay, pal.
Hey, take care, man.
Soon.
Talk to you again soon.
Okay.
Yeah, peace.